When the cold tried to erase us from the earth, the world was quieter than it had ever been, yet more alive in its silence. The wind carried a bitter truth across the open plains and frozen valleys, a truth our ancestors knew better than we do now. Survival was never guaranteed. And yet, against the cruel sweep of ice and storm, a fragile species endured. They endured not because they were stronger, not because they were faster, but because they learned to listen to the world around them. Imagine the landscape, endless stretches of snow, pale and unbroken, broken only by the dark outlines of jagged rocks, or the skeletal trees that refused to bow entirely to the cold. The sky, a heavy grey, pressed low to the earth, as though the heavens themselves were weighing down upon this fragile world. Here, in the late Pleistocene, humans were not yet the masters of the planet. They were wanderers, cautious and observant, feeling the edges of the world with bare hands and shivering limbs. It was in these stark landscapes that survival became a story of understanding rather than conquest. Food was scarce, the seasons cruel, and yet humans pressed onward. They learned to track animals across snowfields, reading footprints as carefully as we might read a letter. A hoof here, a paw there, each marking a tale of movement, fear, and hunger. These were not mere hunters. They were students of life, learning its patterns and rhythms, reading the whispers of the land in the low rustle of wind through ice-crusted grasses. Fire became more than warmth. It was a sanctuary, a boundary against the endless cold. Even when the world outside was brittle and unyielding, a small circle of flame could hold back despair. Imagine a family huddled together around this fire, the glow painting their faces in soft oranges and golds, the shadows flickering like spirits in the dark. The fire's warmth seeped into their bones, not just as heat, but as reassurance that life, against all odds, was still possible. But fire alone could not protect them. They wrapped themselves in furs, stitched with the meticulous care of hands accustomed to patience. Each garment was a map of knowledge, learned over countless winters. Which hides best resisted the wind, which furs held warmth without trapping moisture. Their homes were simple, often caves or temporary shelters, yet each was designed to fight against the elements. They understood the cold not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a force to be respected, studied, and ultimately adapted to. Food was never guaranteed, and the search for it shaped every decision. Herds of mammoth and bison roamed the frozen steppe, moving with seasons and hunger. Humans tracked them with unwavering attention, learning their habits and vulnerabilities. But hunting was perilous. A misstep could mean death by exposure or injury. A slip on ice, a failed spear throw, or an overconfident approach to a massive beast. And yet, the risk was entwined with the reward. The meat fed bodies, the bones crafted tools, the hides created warmth. Every survival act was a cycle of life, a testament to the ingenuity of a species fighting the edge of extinction. We know this because of the traces they left behind. Stone tools, worn and sharpened countless times, reveal not only function, but thought. They tell us of hands that measured and planned, of minds that imagined before acting. Cave art, faint and fragile, hints at the emotional world of these humans. A sketch of a bison, or the curve of a hand pressed into clay, is a whisper across millennia. We were here, we endured, we imagined. And in these remnants, we glimpse a species that was neither weak nor primitive, but profoundly attentive to the world it inhabited. The cold pressed in other ways too. It reshaped the earth itself. Glaciers carved valleys and lakes, rerouted rivers, and buried entire landscapes under ice. Forests thinned, tundra expanded, and the world contracted for the creatures that lived upon it. In such a context, survival was as much about movement as it was about courage. Human groups became nomadic, following not only prey but the fragile threads of habitability. They remembered water sources, favorable hunting grounds, and hidden shelters. Knowledge became inheritance, passed down not just through words, but through the subtle lessons of experience. And yet, despite all this, there were moments of wonder. On nights when the aurora painted the sky in ghostly greens and purples, humans would look up, silent, absorbing the spectacle. It is hard to imagine now, but perhaps they felt something akin to awe, the same emotion we feel today when we gaze upon the vastness of space or the shimmer of a distant galaxy. Even amidst despair and danger, beauty remained. And it was in this delicate balance between threat and marvel, cold and fire, scarcity and plenty, that humanity learned resilience. There were other pressures as well. Predators, the unspoken rulers of the icebound world, prowled near and far. Wolves, saber-tooths, and cave lions were not merely threats. They were teachers in fear and caution. To survive meant understanding not only your prey, but your peers, your competitors, and the predators that shared your world. Each encounter shaped behavior, honed instincts, and demanded respect. These humans were not invincible, but they were alert, adaptive, and humble in ways that we seldom appreciate today. The evidence of this adaptability is remarkable. Genetic studies show that human populations dwindled to precariously low numbers during extreme cold periods, yet they persisted. Archaeological finds reveal sophisticated hunting strategies, the use of heat and shelter, and the creation of symbolic objects that speak to an inner life. Survival was not brute force alone. It was ingenuity, observation, and memory. Those who adapted passed on knowledge, ensuring that even in the harshest epochs, the human story continued. And there were moments of crisis, moments when entire landscapes seemed to conspire against them. Blizzards could appear without warning, burying tracks, flattening tents, and silencing the land under blankets of white. Frostbite and hunger loomed constantly, invisible predators that spared neither the young nor the old. In such times, small victories mattered: a successful hunt, a fire rekindled, a shelter reinforced. These were not grand triumphs, yet they were monumental to those living them, each one a step forward against erasure. Even the social structures mattered deeply. Humans clustered into small groups, kinship networks that provided both physical and emotional safety. Cooperation was essential. One person could carry tools, another could tend the fire, a third could keep watch for predators or sudden storms. Communication, whether through gestures, sounds, or early language, became as important as survival skills themselves. These bonds were more than practical. They were lifelines, teaching trust, care, and the quiet joys of companionship amid a world that was often indifferent. The cold, though relentless, also shaped culture. Songs, stories, and ritual may have arisen in part from the long nights, as humans sought to make sense of the silence, the danger, and the unbroken horizon of ice. Artifacts suggest an emotional life rich with meaning, where symbols and imagery offered comfort, cohesion, and continuity. Even when food was scarce, even when the wind bit at every exposed surface, humans carried these stories forward. They carried memory and imagination, proof that survival was as much about mind and spirit as it was about body. We can feel the echo of that endurance even today. Modern science allows us to peer into the past, to sequence DNA and reconstruct landscapes, revealing not just how humans survived, but why. We understand patterns of migration, of adaptation, and of innovation. We see that our ancestors were never passive victims of their environment. They were active participants, shaping and being shaped by the world in a dance of necessity and invention. And so, as we contemplate their struggles, there is both humility and reassurance. We who live in climate-controlled homes, who shop for food without tracking, who light our nights with electric bulbs, are heirs to a legacy of profound resilience. The cold that once threatened to erase humanity has become a story of persistence, creativity, and subtle intelligence. We survived because they learned to move with the rhythms of the world rather than against them. Consider the fragility of life, once and still. One storm, one famine, one misstep could have ended a lineage. And yet, through careful observation, cooperation, and a quiet kind of courage, humans endured. Each snow-laden valley traversed, each night by the fire, each hunt successfully completed, built a chain linking us to those long-vanished faces. Their knowledge was not written in books, but embedded in patterns of survival and adaptation, etched into the very structure of our being. Even now, we can sense it in the wind across an empty plain, in the shimmer of ice along a riverbank, in the way animals move cautiously, knowing instinctively the dangers of the world. These are whispers of the Pleistocene, echoes of a time when survival was precarious and yet possible. We carry this history in our bones, in our blood, in the inherited ingenuity that has allowed our species to thrive where others did not. And perhaps, in contemplating their endurance, we learn something about ourselves. We learn that resilience is quiet, patient, and often invisible. It is measured not by grand victories alone, but by countless small acts of adaptation and attentiveness. It is found in the warmth shared beside a fire, in the vigilance that prevents catastrophe, in the stories passed down that shape identity and knowledge. The cold tried to erase us, and yet we are here, because those who came before knew how to live within the margins of a harsh world. As night falls over the modern world, we can close our eyes and imagine the wind sweeping across frozen plains, hear the crackle of fire in a darkened cave, feel the careful rhythm of life measured in footsteps, heartbeats, and the pulse of seasons. We can sense the quiet determination that carried humanity through its coldest trials. And in this reflection, there is calm, there is wonder, and there is connection, a reminder that the warmth of life, though fragile, can endure even the most relentless chill. So, as you lie in your bed, consider this. Somewhere, in a world of ice and silence, humans once huddled close, sharing firelight and stories, learning to survive against impossible odds. They listened to the land, respected its dangers, and found beauty in its starkness. And because of them, we exist. Their endurance is our inheritance, their courage our quiet guide. Close your eyes and let the image linger. The wind outside is cold, yes, but within, the fire burns. The footsteps of those who came before echo softly, not in fear, but in a testament to persistence, imagination, and the delicate, enduring miracle of life. The cold tried to erase us, yet here we are. A proof of resilience, a proof of care, and a proof that, sometimes, survival is the greatest story ever told. And so, as sleep draws near, we remember the lesson of those ancient winters. To endure is not merely to exist, but to observe, adapt, and move forward with patience, intelligence, and quiet courage. In the frostbitten silence of prehistory, humanity learned what it means to be alive. And tonight, as your breath mingles with the calm of the night, that same quiet endurance surrounds you, a legacy of warmth, hope, and the unbroken thread of survival.